Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another joint meeting of the Creve Coeur and Maryland Heights Township Democratic Clubs. I am unmuting the chair of the Creve Coeur Club, that's Florence Pullen, and I'm Doug McCreery, for those of you who don't know. Florence, you there? Well, I tried. Anyway, to keep things rolling, we have two speakers tonight, Jill Schupp and that's State Senator Jill Schupp and House of Representatives Representative Tracy McCreery, who will be giving us an update on what's going on in our state legislature. Unfortunately, that's all about politics. I like to think of it more about governance, but there are times when it seems like we're not being properly governed and driven by politics. But hopefully we'll hear a little bit about some governance. And Jill, I'm going to unmute you and give you the floor to start things off. Maybe you can explain your time constraints tonight, and then we'll open it up for questions, and then we'll have Tracy speak. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to unmute both Tracy and Jill and let you guys kind of present together, because you probably have some comments comparing and contrasting what's going on in each house.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. I'm looking for Tracy on my list here. Tracy, hang in there. Oh, you should be unmuted now, Tracy.
Yes. Oh, great.
Okay.
So, I think I'll start if you don't mind, Tracy. I think we both want to thank Florence Pullen and Harvey Ferdman for inviting us to be here today to give a legislative update. And I know that there are other elected officials in the audience. I know Trish Gunby is out there. I know LaDonna Applebaum is out there. So I want to say hello and welcome. And Tracy, if you see more people than I do.
Well, and former beloved colleague Sue Meredith is on the line as well. So good to see Sue as well.
So I wanted to let you know right out of the gate, I have another Zoom meeting tonight. These our schedules get filled even when we can't be together in person. So I'll be checking out about 7:35 and wanted to let you know that. But Tracy and I have put together an agenda to share, to go through with you both what's been going on and sort of the lay of the land in Jefferson City. So Tracy, if you want to get started, that would be great.
Sure. So just wanted to remind folks, and I'm glad Trish Gunby is on the line. I wanted to just remind folks about the makeup of the Republicans and the Democrats in the Missouri House. So out of 163 legislators, we have 48 Democrats in the House. And of course, we were at 47 until Representative Gunby flipped a red seat to a blue seat. So that was really exciting. And she's been a great addition to the team. And of course, LaDonna was already on the team and is a great addition as well. So there's one vacancy. So 48 Democrats, one vacancy, which means the rest of that up to 163 are Republicans.
And if in the Senate, if we had a full legislature, there would be 34, but we have 3 vacancies. They were all 3 appointments by the governor to other positions. And so we're down to 31. Of those 31, 8 of us are Democrats, and the other 23 are Republicans. So in both the House and the Senate, we are outnumbered with supermajorities of the other party. And as we all know, the governor's office currently is Republican. So that's sort of the lay of the land to give you a sense. So when many of you call and email us and say, stop this or make sure this happens, sometimes it's a little harder than it may appear from the outside, but we still love and want to hear from you and understand where you stand on the issues. Because the truth is, we don't, even though we're all Democrats and strong Democrats, depending upon our perspectives and what we learn about in our respective chambers, we don't always necessarily vote the same way. Tracy, this was a crazy session. We were shut down for 6 weeks of the legislative session.
Well, and back when we had that big scandal with Speaker Deal, and we were shut down for day after day after day as he was locked in his office. At the time, I thought nothing could get any crazier. But then we have, the Greitens scandal and how that shut things down for day after day after day. And I thought nothing can get crazier. But I'll be darned if we didn't figure out a way to top that with this, international pandemic that really truly shut the legislature down. So, and today there was every day the governor holds well, not every day, but most days the governor holds a press event. And today the Department of Health and Senior Services, as of 2 p.m., we've crossed over the 600 mark. So there have now been 605 deaths in the state of Missouri that are attributed to COVID-19, and we're close to 11,000 confirmed cases. So, we're still definitely in the middle of dealing with this pandemic, this virus.
And dealing with it in a state that I think has not had robust testing, that we need to really get our head and hands around what is going on in the state of Missouri, and will our numbers increase or decrease. What happened in these last 3 weeks that we were in session was a very rushed budget process. So the House was almost done with the budget. They had to finish up and take another look and then send it over to the Senate. And in a very short time frame, within 2 weeks, the Senate had to recraft the budget based on an influx of federal dollars that we know is really important to us, but also was putting together the budget and changing positions from what the governor and the House had brought forward so that we could get this done by what's constitutionally required, which is May 8th, even though the new budget doesn't go into effect until July 1st. In terms of being in the Capitol, there are, between the House and the Senate, there are about 200 of us, and then you bring in the people that were not really supposed to be in the Capitol, but were there, lobbyists. As each week went on, we saw more and more lobbyists. And of course, all of our staffs were there. So hundreds, literally hundreds of people in the Capitol from across the state during a pandemic. And who would have ever thought that wearing a mask would have become a partisan issue? And yet what we saw in both chambers was that the vast majority of Democrats were wearing masks. As we know, those are worn to protect others. And the vast majority of Republicans were not. And the lobbyists, I think it depended upon, frankly, the day of the week. So, which is unfortunate. So we all went back to our respective parts of the state, and we will see. And I'm hopeful that I brought nothing home for my husband besides my suitcase, because our goal is to not make anyone else sick back in our communities.
Exactly. Well, in some of the press availability leading up to our return to Jefferson City, Republican leadership in both chambers really, I think, misled reporters. And they made it, the Republican leadership in both chambers made it sound like we were only coming back to Jefferson City to deal with the budget and COVID-related issues and public policy. But the reality is once we got there, I felt like the Republicans really prioritized their business as usual agenda, and we were back on passing some things that were definitely not budget related and definitely nothing to do in response to health. And in fact, we'll cover this later, but we did some things that I actually think are the opposite of what we should be doing during a pandemic. So there was a lot of denial, in my opinion, that we're facing a pandemic of such a scale.
Right. And so, we as the members of the minority party don't get to set the agenda. We saw some good bills that were passed and some bills that we don't think are so good. And we're going to go through a few of those. And, I went into this session knowing that I am looking to run for Congress, and told my staff, we will not be getting anything passed this year. And I'm delighted to tell you that that's not true. Out of my office came 3 bills that were added to other bills in amendment form. And I think that, thank you, Tracy. I think that they're pretty good bills. So I wanted to talk with you about, I see some hands clapping, so I appreciate that. I know that those of you who work with me know how hard it is to get this done, but I couldn't get it done without the help from my fellow Democrats, but also with some Republicans, people on the other side of the aisle who were willing to work with me to push some pretty good legislation forward. One of the pieces was what I called the Justice for Survivors Act, which means that when you are the victim of sexual assault, right now, this story was brought to me because a young woman on a college campus was raped. She went to the local hospital to have a rape kit done, which is an examination that collects the forensic evidence for use later to put a perpetrator behind bars. And this young woman was not able to get that forensic exam done at that hospital near her college campus, and was instead transported 2 hours by police officers to another hospital where she could have the exam done. This is the reason why out of every 1,000 sexual assaults that go on, 995 perpetrators walk free. And we wanted to change that. And we had a lot of pushback from different organizations that did not want to see this bill passed. We were able to get it passed so that going forward, every single hospital in the state of Missouri will either have the appropriate trained people on staff or will access our telehealth network, where trained personnel are on staff 24/7, 365 days a week to walk the medical person through the process to collect and protect the evidence so that this, generally speaking, woman is not re-victimized when she goes to the hospital. And we're delighted to have gotten that done. We also know that in the state of Missouri, we rank high in maternal mortality, and part of that is due to postpartum depression. And during this COVID environment, where people are socially distancing, and so people feel a little more isolated, and where socially distancing and economic insecurity is another big reason that people suffer depression. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is to help these moms who have just given birth get through their postpartum depression. Most people who have health insurance can access a mental health provider, but our low-income women who are required to who have Medicaid only get 60 days worth of coverage after they deliver that baby. This bill requires, of course, approval through the Missouri budget, through the budget process going forward, but it would allow women who are suffering from postpartum depression and mental health illness to get a year's worth of coverage so that they are able to bond with that new child, take care of themselves and their families, and for those who are working to get back into the workforce. This has ramifications not just for the mother, but for that family and frankly for that child for the long haul. So we were really excited to get that done. And the final piece that I got passed was called Buddy Check 22. We know veterans are also at high risk of suicide. This is such a simple bill. We lose 22 veterans every day in this country to suicide. So on the 22nd day of each month, we ask people to remember to check in on their buddy, to reach out to someone who is a veteran, let them know you care about them and you're thinking of them. That simple act of communicating with someone can be the difference between someone taking his or her own life and them surviving and going forward. So while this applies to veterans, in this difficult time especially, it should apply to all of us. And we should all remember to check in on those people who may be feeling isolated, economically insecure, and living at home suffering from depression. So those are some of what I see as positive bills we got done this legislative session. Tracy, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the next bill that was on our agenda.
Well, and I just want to take a moment to say one of Jill Schupp's best qualities is she's very modest. I hope all of you realize what a big deal this is, that she was able to accomplish this. Not only are we in the super minority in both chambers, but her colleagues knew that she is running for Congress, and they could have very well just decided that they weren't going to give Senator Schupp any successes. So this is a great example of how persistent Senator Schupp is and how she knows how to put what's best for others forward. And I'm just really, really honored to see so many good things come out of our senator's office. So congratulations. So good news, bad news. So I hear sometimes people complain like, oh, the legislature's so dysfunctional, they're not even passing bills. Well, I think that that's not necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of the things that are coming out of a lot of state capitals these days that are Republican run are things that actually are harmful to working families. So this year we only had 31, maybe 32 bills that were passed, meaning that they were truly agreed and finally passed. And that's not counting the budget bills. But what's interesting when I say only 31 or 32, what we don't know yet is within each one of these 31, 32 bills could be like dozens of other bills that are bundled up in there. So to say that these are omnibus bills is an understatement. That some of the bills that we passed are omnibus bills on steroids. And my hunch, I'm not a lawyer, but my hunch is a lot of these bills will be found to be in violation of several court rulings where we've got multiple subjects all under the same title and such. They're a mess, but that's for the courts to figure out. And you know, a lot of these things are still in the governor's hands. He'll have to decide if he's going to sign some of these things. I think the governor could be in an interesting predicament because some of these bills are just truly a mess. And a lot of us in the minority, including LaDonna and Trish, notice problems with bills. And of course, we're unable to fix them. They can't take even simple feedback from us. So one of the worst pieces of legislation that passed this year is the repeal of Clean Missouri. I'm calling it Dirty Missouri. I don't know what we'll be calling it moving into the election, but that was a really, really disappointing thing to see happen because Clean Missouri passed overwhelmingly. Every Senate district in the state of Missouri it passed in, and you know, so that's saying a lot. In some of the areas where we live and where these clubs have members, it passed, you know, in the 70% range, which means it was a very nonpartisan support from the voters. This proposal, I think, is really just smoke and mirrors. The Republicans see that the end of gerrymandering will cause them to lose a few seats. So this is a way to just take fair, nonpartisan redistricting out of the hands of a state demographer and put it back into the hands of politicians. So, you know, we're going to see what happens, but I'm confident that the voters will see through this sham and see what is actually trying to be attempted, and the voters that people that support fair elections will win this fall again. So what the it's SJR 38, this undoing of Clean Missouri, would say that competitiveness moves to the bottom of how you draw maps, and that's one of the biggest challenges when we talk to Missourians all around the state. Countless legislative districts are not competitive, so when the voters go to vote, they have no option. So
right. So they only have Republicans or Democrats. They don't have, so Tracy and I happen to represent districts that are pretty split. So we've run in competitive races because people have a real choice between the Republican or the Democrat. This undoes that competitiveness that Tracy was talking about.
Well, and one of the things that I was most concerned about, this undoing of Clean Missouri has many problems, but one of the things I was most concerned about is over the past 150 years, the state of Missouri has drawn our maps based on total population, but this Dirty Missouri plan would base the population numbers on people of voting age, which means that children won't be counted. And of course, you know, we all have neighbors out here in Olivet, Creve Coeur, Chesterfield, whatever, you know, that are they're immigrants, they're here legally, but they don't necessarily vote. But for 150 years, every state in this country has based things on total population, not just people who can vote. So what that would have an impact of really impacting communities that have a lot of children, especially, and it would affect the allocation of services as well. So it's quite concerning. So my hunch is that Harvey and Florence will have future programs on this so that we know what to do as activists.
Right. And it's going to be critical that we educate people. And, you know, we've known about this for a long time. We knew it was a Republican priority. We were hopeful that that because this session was shrunk, that it wouldn't move forward. And frankly, from what I understand, the polling on it is not good, but
not good for them.
Sure. Not good for them, but unless we have everybody that we know get out and vote it down, there is that possibility that it will pass. And that is, once again, the ramifications of that kind of legislation has a decade long, the ramification will last for a decade long at least. And when we have people that don't have competitive districts and don't hear stories or information or values from both sides of the aisle, what happens is then they tend to think of their area as only Republican or only Democratic. And it takes decades to overcome those views and to really make inroads. You know, Trish Gumby, frankly, she's one of those success stories. And for her to have won by 8 points in a district that was considered to be Republican, where many people thought the Republican would win. I mean, she is a shining example of working hard and getting people out and giving people a positive alternative. And that's what they wanted. So we need to defeat dirty Missouri.
Right. Well, and we did have some successes. I'll let Senator Schupp talk about the successes we had on the election bills, mainly because I think that the Senate played a key role in negotiating what started out as a pretty bad elections omnibus bill. But then as the days went on, there was some pretty intense negotiations going on. So Senator Schupp, can you talk a little bit about what we did with the omnibus elections bill?
Yes, and so it's not great, and it's not a long-term solution to our problem about hurdles getting in the way of people's access to the polls, but it's a short-term small fix. And I want you all to understand how it's going to work. So as you know, if you currently ask for an absentee ballot, you have to check one of 6 boxes. One of the boxes is that, and I actually have these all written down, that you're going to be absent on election day because of the incapacity or confinement due to illness or physical disability, including a person who is primarily responsible for the physical care of a person who is incapacitated or confined due to illness or disability. Now, some people, if you're in the county like we are, you might have gotten from the Board of Elections in the county in the mail 3 forms to fill out for absentee ballots. That particular response, and you have to check one of these responses. That particular response was one that many people checked because they thought it might have alluded to confinement due to COVID, but my belief is that it doesn't. So one of the things that was negotiated through the conference committee for the elections, and it was negotiated, just let me tell you, from midnight till 3 a.m., I think Thursday night before the Friday vote, was that there will be a 7th box. And that 7th box says that you will be allowed to vote absentee if, and now I'm looking for my language here that I have, but I'm not finding it. Essentially what it says is you will be able to vote absentee by mail if you are 65 years of age or older, and this is all tied to COVID-19. If you are in one of the categories that allows you to believe that you either are sick or may get sick by going to the polls. So if you're in a high-risk category, you are 65 or older, so I've made the cut, if I wanted to vote absentee, you have an upper respiratory illness, you have an immune suppressed system, and again, I have it here, so I'll get back to it in a minute and read it to you. But if you fall into one of those categories, you can request an absentee ballot, and you can get an absentee ballot for this category, this new COVID-19, or for the second category I read you about having a disability or taking care of someone with one. And you can do that without being required to have a notary sign off on your ballot. For all the other reasons that are included that you can mark the box on, absence because you're going to be out of state, because of a religious belief, because of your employment as an election authority, because of incarceration, as long as you are qualifying for all the other reasons that say you can vote, or if you are in the certified participation, a certified participant in the address confidentiality program, those are reasons that you can check for voting absentee, but you have to have a notary signature in order to send those ballots in. This new legislation says that for the upcoming elections, when this goes into place, so for the November election, essentially, for those two reasons, if you fall into those categories, you don't have to have a notary. For the other ones, you do. And then there is one other piece of this election bill. Well, it's actually passed on a different bill, and it's about online notary. So there was quite a discussion that went on the floor between me and the Senate sponsor of this bill that said, and we talked about whether you could have an online notary notarize your ballot. You can, according to her, and according to information we got back from Senate research today. So in the November election only, if you fit into those other categories, you can pay for a notary online to notarize your ballot if you don't want to go out, but you will have to pay for it. If you are willing to go out and get your ballot notarized for your absentee excuse, you will not have to pay for it. So those are some of the choices you have to make. And it's unfortunate that we do that because there are a lot of people that are not going to be savvy enough to understand this and to know that you not only have to request the ballot, but it has to be in the hands of the election authority on the election date. So it can't just be postmarked by election day, by November 3rd. It has to be received by the St. Louis County Board of Elections on or before November 3rd. So it's complicated. There are people among us who are interpreting these things differently. If you have questions, here's who I'm going to suggest that you call. And the Missouri Voter Protection Group, their number is 1-888-OUR-VOTE. 1-888, I'm sorry, not 888, I apologize. 866-OUR-VOTE. 1-866, that's 687-8683. But if you remember 1-866-OUR-VOTE, they will give you answers to all these questions. This organization is led by Denise Lieberman, who is one of Missouri's own, who works on election rules in the state of Missouri and across the country. So she can help you. These are not perfect bills, but this is the Democrats pushing hard for something to give a bit of a break in this COVID environment to people so that you have the ability to cast your vote and do what you need to do at the polls. And mostly it is effective for November.
Well, and just this afternoon, maybe a little bit before dinner time, Denise Lieberman's group, the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition, put out this handy one-page chart that helps you, it puts in writing what Senator Schupp just shared. So I'll make sure to get this to Harvey, and hopefully he can push that out to the club. And the one caveat with this is we still, like, I'm assuming the governor will sign this bill, but I don't know that. So when we talk about this, we're talking about it as if it's going to be signed, but you know, until the governor signs this bill, who knows?
And Tracy, I don't know what it says on that chart, but just to be clear, yesterday when Denise and I talked, she didn't believe that the notary would work for this, but my understanding from legislative research today is that it will, but we'll make sure that we push out the best and the correct information to you.
Very good.
Senator Schupp, I know we only have 4 more minutes of your time if I'm reading my clock right. We do have a couple of questions that came in via chat. I'm just going to read them both really quickly. One is, why is this allowed? This is why I don't understand why it's legal to overturn the will of the voters. The other question is, can Democrats use this move at election time to put Republicans on the defensive for trying to undo the will of the people? Were there many Democrats who voted, were there any Democrats who voted to approve Dirty Missouri? And were there any Republicans who voted against Dirty Missouri?
On the Senate side, we voted quite a while back on that. I know that all the Democrats stood together. I don't recall, there may have been one or two Republicans who voted with the Democrats because they are running in competitive.
Lincoln Huff voted, a Springfield Republican voted with the Dems in the Senate. And we did have at least one Democrat vote for Dirty Missouri, but some Republicans voted against undoing the will of the voters. So it was an interesting mix of voters.
Very good.
And then, Jill, can you talk a little bit about how can they undo the will of the voters on this?
Well, this won't be the first time. I mean, remember years ago, we voted on puppy mills and they came in and undid the will of the voters. And frankly, what we need to do is hold them accountable. And if you're in Trish's district or Tracy's district, my district, you have people that agree with you. And LaDonna's district, let's quit undoing the will of the voters. We need to make sure we hold people accountable. And the way that we're truly able to do that is to have, it goes back to Clean Missouri itself, is to have competitive districts where people have a real choice. But when you can and where you can, when you call people out who are not doing what you believe is in the best interest of the people of this state, let's call them out. Let's talk about them. There are races throughout the state that are going on, and some of them very competitive. Representative Deb Lavender, who is running for Senate, is in one of those very competitive districts. And I can tell you that her opponent is somebody who would have voted for Dirty Missouri. So let's make sure we're aware of that, and let's make sure we call people out for that issue and for others where we think that they are heading and taking this state and your district in the wrong direction.
Thank you, Senator Schupp. Those questions, the first one came from Stan Ferdman, and the second one came from Tom Tobin. And Trish Gumby has a comment as well. She heard rumors that the Board of Elections may let folks check the second box and need not worry about a notary. I think you may have addressed that, but in case you haven't.
I don't think you need a notary on the second box. And frankly, the reality is I would never tell anybody to do something that isn't right, but it looks to me, I have a letter from the county executive that they are saying, if you want to stay home, here's something, check a box and stay home. I don't know that there's a lot of follow-up on who's checked what box and whether or not you truly are caring for someone with a disability or have a disability, but I don't feel comfortable saying to you that I'm okay with you checking the box. I would rather have you call the Board of Elections Commission and hear directly from them about what their intentions were when they sent out a letter to those of you who are 6 years old or older, suggesting that you would be able to vote.
I can speak to that from personal experience. If the second box is the one that says that there's an illness that prevents you from voting, I got those forms, I checked those boxes, and I've already received my absentee ballot for the June election. It's already here.
All right, I'm sorry that I have to check out and we didn't get through, but I know you're in great hands with Tracy. Thank you for this opportunity and hope to see you all soon. Take care.
Thanks, Jill.
Bye-bye.
Tracy.
Yep, great. Well, and just to finish up on the elections topic, part of the compromise that happened between midnight and 3 in the morning with the conferees was we were able to get the photo ID requirement out of the bill, which is a big bonus for us because data shows that there are more low-income folks that don't have photo identification. So I think that was a really big win for us to protect folks that don't have a photo ID. We want them to still be able to vote. And then there were some really pretty drastic changes to the initiative petition process that was taken out of that elections omnibus bill. So it's a big win for democracy right there. So it had increased fees for filing and just made many more high hurdles for initiative petitions to go forward. And you know, why I don't want to see changes to the initiative petition process in this state is because what happens when a legislature refuses to do what the people want to do is the initiative petition process gives people a way to get things done themselves when the legislature refuses to act. So it's important to me that the initiative petition process remain accessible and that we're not creating undue burdens or hoops to get things to the voters. One of the most important things we do as legislators, if we could only list one thing that we really do that's most important, it is dealing with the budget. You know, we have about a $30 billion state budget. And of course, you know, in the state of Missouri, we have to pass a balanced budget every year. Earlier on, we talked about how the House had spent months having meetings and hearings and hearing witnesses, and we were within days of handing the budget. The budget always starts in the House and then goes to the Senate. But then the coronavirus hit, and very quickly we could see that we were going to have to downshift our budget estimate. So right now we downshifted by about $700 million, but the word is out that we're probably going to have to go back to Jefferson City sometime, you know, this spring or summer to work on the budget a little bit more, because I think that the economic impact is still unknown. And because we have to have a balanced budget, we need to have input from everybody. So it's one of the most important things we do. We did have a big win in the budget. Senator John Rizzo, he goes by JJ Rizzo, who's the new Democratic minority leader over in the Senate. He was able to get money put into the budget to help pay for COVID-19 testing for anyone that wants to get tested, and it would reimburse for up to $150 per test. So that's a really big win. And that's especially important for folks that are uninsured or underinsured. So that was a big win led by the Democrats over on the Senate side. We did get a lot of money into the budget to help with to increase testing. And also there were several things in different budgets that will help provide relief to small businesses, and also provide some relief to workers who were displaced due to job loss, and to help workers find work. So, you know, we did the best we could. Our revenue collections at this point in the state of Missouri are down 54%. That's 54%. It's just staggering, the amount of money that our budget has been hit by. So the work that the federal government has done with getting the CARES Act money to the state was vital, and also extending the tax deadline from April 15th to, I guess it's July 15th. That was a big deal as well. So, you know, we're really just trying to do the best we can right now until we can figure out a way to kind of stabilize this economic ship that's really off kilter right now. One of the things that I was most disappointed about is, for the 8th year in a row, the Missouri legislature was unable to pass the PDMP. Missouri is the only state in the nation who does not have a statewide prescription drug monitoring program. Although if you live in this region, as I assume most folks on this call do, we are living under the protections of St. Louis County. They did the right thing years ago by making their county version of the prescription drug monitoring available to other political subdivisions. So close to between 80 and 90% of Missouri is covered right now under the St. Louis County version of the prescription drug monitoring. But medical experts will tell you it would have been, it's still much better to have a statewide approach. So it was really disappointing for me. The Republican sponsor for that has worked tirelessly, and it really just was hurtful to see that not make it across the finish line. We had some good news as it relates to protecting public education. A lot of the really bad education bills failed. So public education is safe, if you will, for another year. The voucher tax credit program failed. The charter school expansion legislation failed. Unfortunately, a bill that would say that DACA students, those are deferred action for childhood arrivals. Even though a lot of these DACA students have lived in Missouri for as long as they can remember, they are not able to benefit from paying in-state tuition, even though they're Missourian. So that was a really draconian, mean-spirited thing that the Republican Party has done. Basically punish these dreamers, these Missouri version of dreamers, to pay out-of-state tuition. While if their siblings were born here in Missouri, their siblings pay 3 times less for higher education. So I'm most disappointed by that. And I'm concerned that that means that some of these students won't be able to afford to go to college if they're paying the out-of-state tuition. It just means that some of these state schools are just prohibitively expensive. I'm open for questions too. I'm just kind of going through some things, and Harvey, feel free to send questions my way.
Yeah, I think I'll do that. I'm not, my screen doesn't show the raise hand capability. I thought there was an ability to raise hands, but before we go to general questions, Michael Meredith has something he wants to share with the group. Michael, you're on. You should be able to unmute.
Okay, I can be heard? Okay, I just wanted to recognize and compliment my state rep, Tracy McCreery, for being named Missouri Conservation Federation's Legislator of the Year.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, Michael. That means a lot to me. One of the coolest things about winning that award is they make sure like one Democrat wins and one Republican. And I had a really special evening bonding with a Republican senator who was also named Conservation Legislator of the Year. And so I feel confident moving forward that we have a powerful senator in on the other side of the building to help us stop some of this anti-conservation department work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not sure.
I've got plenty more I can do, but I don't want this to feel like I'm just, rattling off things. But some of this, probably one of the things that's, so how many of you in the last couple of months have been doing a lot more online shopping? I know I have. So one of the things that's going to really hurt a lot of our municipalities, and as you know, the taxes we pay, retail taxes we pay, sales taxes we pay, are things that go to fund our fire departments, our police departments, things like that. So one of the big disappointments is that the state of Missouri, the legislature was unable to pass a Wayfair fix, if you will. So we have got to figure out a way that we can start more efficiently collecting sales taxes on internet purchases to get those back to the municipalities and to the county where they belong. My concern is that, and it's not a new tax, we're already supposed to be paying these taxes anyway, but because we have so many different taxing structures in the state, it's all of us as taxpayers are supposed to voluntarily be paying these taxes. So, so it's not a new tax, but we need to figure out a way, we need to pass a way so that the infrastructure is in place to get this tax money back to our cities and counties. We're creating a big mess right now. And I think even after this pandemic has gone away or a vaccine is available, I think a lot of us are not going to return to shopping as we once knew it before this. So we've got to figure out a way to get that Wayfair fix passed.
Very good.
And we did have a big victory. Michael will be excited about this. We had a victory in the legislature this year. There were folks that really wanted to ban the use of eminent domain to build Grain Belt Express, which is a way to transmit clean, renewable wind energy from the west of us across the state of Missouri. And there was a core group of legislators that was kind of getting really stoked up by the Farm Bureau. And then of course, the House Speaker, Elijah Har, really wanted to see this pass. They wanted to ban the use of eminent domain to put these towers on that would transmit clean, renewable energy across the state. And we were able to stop that. So that's a huge deal. There will be, at this point, and I can expect this list to grow, at this point, over 500,000 Missourians live in municipalities that will be able to buy this affordable, clean, renewable energy. But it also will help the entire country because this energy will be transmitted to the east of Missouri, and it'll really do a lot to help get clean energy to the East Coast. So that was a big win. And that was definitely a win that was possible through the work of Democrats and Republicans together.
Very good. I'm not seeing people raising their hands, so I'm gonna take a chance here, and I'm gonna unmute everybody. If you have, if you have a question, just be respectful that many people may try to talk at once. I do want to caution people who are dialed in that you don't have the ability to mute by the system, but if you use your individual phone, please do that. You don't want to hear background noise or private conversations. So I'm going to unmute and give everyone the ability to unmute themselves individually if they want to ask a question. So you should be able to unmute individually and ask a question if you want.
You can dial in through a phone and then.
I have a question.
Go
ahead.
for it.
My question is, who is behind not passing that Wayfair tax? I'm really curious, why wouldn't, who would be objecting to that?
Well, that's a really good question. And that all played out in the Senate on Thursday. They spent 5 hours putting together a compromise where they would move that forward. But then during a Senate break, a Republican senator from St. Charles said he wouldn't be able to support it. So it was really disappointing. And I don't think it's partisan as much as it just is some of that power, the power play and the power struggle that happens in the state Senate, because we have elected officials that are mayors that are Republicans and mayors that are Democrats that all are begging us to make this fix. So I'm hopeful that we made such good progress on Thursday in the Senate on this fix that
I do have it muted.
for a special session to try to address this.
Thank you.
Well, I will say we did stop some pretty bad bills as it relates to public safety and weapons. So there were several gun rights expansion amendments put on bills that would have included arming teachers or educators. We put a bill onto another bill in the Missouri House that would have allowed for guns everywhere, including college campuses, churches, daycares, bars, that kind of thing. And we also heard bills in both chambers that would nullify all federal gun laws, which is quite concerning. Not only would we have nullified or not recognized federal gun laws, it would have put our local law enforcement in this predicament that if they worked with the federal law enforcement on anything, that they could be sued and that they could lose their job. So it was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And you know, but we do a lot of really crazy things in the Missouri legislature. So, and probably the most sensible gun expansion that didn't pass just had to do with allowing for guns to be weapons to be carried on public transit, and that did not pass either.
Oh, thank God.
Tracy?
Yeah.
Was there any substantive healthcare legislation even proposed? Given all the ballyhoo about Medicaid transformation and the $2.7 million McKinsey and Company report, this is the largest spending category in the budget. What happened there?
Well, I'll let Trish and LaDonna pipe in if they can think of anything. I can't think of anything we really did that would expand healthcare. We nibbled around the edges a little bit. We did some things that would help children and foster children. But really, I think that some of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle are so freaked out about Medicaid expansion being on the ballot this fall, and that most of what they did, they spent a lot of their healthcare energy on trying to figure out a way to counter Medicaid expansion, basically. But yeah, I don't recall anything really that I would tout as pro healthcare that happened this session.
And I'd like to make a point, and it is a little complicated, but the fact of the matter is that the Republican leadership has been physically irresponsible, and Democrats need to take them to task on this for failing to, and that report was in some ways, controversial, but there were hundreds of millions of dollars of efficiency related proposals in that report. They paid for it, and then they ignored it. And I had this conversation with David Wood. He said, well, that's just another consulting study. Well, for $2.7 million coming from the budget chairman, It's pretty disgraceful, and I think it should be an issue.
Well, I agree, Don. I sit on the Missouri Health Net Oversight Committee. We have a meeting at the end of the month, and that's one of the things I feel like a broken record. I'm one of, actually, me and Senator Schupp are on that committee. We're the only two Democrats. And so we're constantly pushing for those kinds of things to be addressed. So we're slowly making our way through that McKinsey report. And you're absolutely right. That was started under Governor Greitens and continued under Governor Parsons. So why we're not taking this advice from people that I think have some really good feedback is beyond me.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go for it, Richard.
Yeah, Representative McCreery, which of the two St. Charles senators were you referring to?
It was Senator Eigel. So my understanding was that he kind of sat there. So normally now I'm speaking as a former Senate staffer, but normally if a senator has a problem with something, they either publicly there on the Senate floor or behind the scenes express their discontent and are part of working out a negotiation. This negotiation over a Wayfair fix happened over 5 hours. And my understanding is that Senator Eigel didn't really say anything until later on. And he just said, like, I'm not gonna support this. And because we have to adjourn on Friday night, this past Friday night at 6 o'clock, and when one senator has a problem with something, it blows the whole thing up. So, but I'm the eternal optimist. I feel like the fact that we spent 5 hours on this on a Thursday before we adjourn tells me that there's hope of getting something worked out.
Well, yeah, and let me just add that Senator Eigel is my opponent in this next election. So hopefully this won't happen next year.
That would be nice. And this will be something too that we need to make sure the voters know about.
Thank you.
Any other questions? There's a question from Diane Casson. For small business owners, do they need to be applying for relief, or will the state come to them? I know the answer to that one if you don't, Tracy.
Go ahead, Harvey.
The best thing is to apply through your bank. And if your bank is too busy, then go to a local, smaller community bank. They're much more friendly to servicing these loans.
Yeah, and you don't have to have an existing, some people think, oh, I've been banking at X bank for 20 years. That's the only place you can go. That's not true. And we've had much success as legislators. I worked with a constituent today. She needed to get a certain form from the Secretary of State's office to the bank as proof that they were in business or something. And so there's a lot of teamwork going on with making sure the banks are getting everything they need to help these small businesses. And don't forget, there's some money available through our St. Louis County Council people, and that's broken down by region. And the deadline for those applications has been extended to the end of the month. So if you're a small business owner based in St. Louis County, make sure you reach out to your appropriate county council person.
That's good. With Greater Missouri and Medicaid expansion.
Any other questions?
I have a question. I wanted to know if anybody's working on having electric powered mowers and blowers for the starting to work on it, because it's going to take a few years to phase it in for these guys.
What do you mean, for the state?
Yeah, to not let people to get rid of the gas mowers.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a really good point. You know, I don't know of any legislation that's doing that, but I did hear anecdotally today, for those of us that have been working from home the last couple months, some of us are secretly hoping we can get back to the office soon because we're tired of hearing gas-powered leaf blowers going 24/7, which is what it feels like. So, but yeah, that's a really good question, Ed. I'm hoping, you know, one thing we're noticing is the free market is working a little bit on this, where the price is starting to come down. So I think more and more people are looking at that, but I don't know of any government incentives to do that at this point.
I know they're starting to talk about it in Illinois. They need to talk about it because these guys are going to these guys have to plan on it, and they put equipment every 3 to 4 years anyway.
Good point.
Okay, Thank you.
I have a question. What are the chances that SJR 38 is changed from the November ballot to the August ballot?
Well, I think that, there was a lawsuit filed today by the Clean Missouri folks, and some of our friends' names appeared on that lawsuit, including our friend Cheryl Hibbler from St. Charles County. So there is a lot that's going to happen between now and when the undoing of Clean Missouri heads to the ballot. You know, I'm confident that whether it appears in August or November, either way, the voters are smart. Voters are smart and they know what they're doing when they go vote, and that the anti-gerrymandering efforts will be upheld. So I don't really have a strong feeling one way or the other when it gets to the voters. But it'll be a tough lift to get it onto the August ballot, because there are a lot of things that have to happen between now and when it goes to the ballot.
I have to tape it in.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Okay, with that, Diane, are you asking a question or just some background noise?
No, not asking a question.
I had one last question.
Oh, Richard, hi, we can see you now.
Yes, I figured out what was happening here. I just have had some people ask me if I knew how long the extra $600 of unemployment insurance was going to last.
It says through July right now.
I don't know that. I know that our federal congressional delegation, these are some of the things that they're working on. That's money that actually has been passed through from the federal government to the state to implement. So I don't know the status of that.
I knew it was federal, but I thought the Division of Employment Security might know something about it.
If
check with
maybe if Trish or LaDonna know anything, let me know, but I've not heard anything. A lot of this is us sort of waiting to see what they're going to do in Washington, D.C. So our department here is really just like the implementer of the program.
As of right now, I believe that money is set to last until July 25th.
Okay, good.
That's great.
Very good.
Jackson.
So,
I don't see her anywhere.
I encourage everyone to send either me or Florence any suggestions you have for future programs. We hope to continue meeting like this, as well as meeting in person once we are safe to do that. I think this is a pretty decent format, and I welcome any feedback on likes, dislikes, and ways to improve. And with that, I think we'll close the meeting. Florence, are you there? Do you have anything you want to add? We could see you for a minute, but I can't hear you, Florence. Let's see if we can get you unmuted. Florence, you need to unmute your microphone, maybe touch you. There you go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, this was a very nice discussion tonight, and we're very happy that Senator Schupp and Representative Tracy McCreery had a chance to come on and give us an update on the last part of the legislation. And we hope that everyone enjoyed the discussion and hope to see you sometime next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I just say that I just want to do a shout out to Representative McCreery. She really, I'm on utilities with her. She's the ranking minority member, and she's really taken me under her wing. And it's been she's had to have a big wing to do that, to get me up to speed on everything utility, but in a lot of other areas as well. So thanks to her for that. And also LaDonna, my sweet mate's on here as well. And between both of them, when you jump into something and it's a moving train and you're jumping on and trying to figure out what's going on, it's really appreciated. So thank you to both of you.
Well, thanks for the kind words, and we're so glad to have you on the team. You've been a great addition.
Yes, I'm so glad to have Trish, and we share a legislative assistant as well. So that makes it nice.
Yeah.
And thank you, Tracy.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to return to the beach.
All
Great
right.
job. Great job, Harvey.
Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.